This is an M1 Macbook Air with 8 gigs of RAM, running GTA 5, Assassin's Creed Black Flag and Red Dead Redemption. Now, gaming on a Mac sounds complicated, right? Well, not entirely. MacBooks have traditionally been seen as productivity machines, not gaming devices. But in 2020, that narrative started to shift with the introduction of Apple Silicon. The M1 MacBook Air quickly became a fan favorite among Mac users, and for a good reason. Its longevity is impressive. I've seen people still using it in 2025, so I decided to get one myself. Little did I know I'll end up using it for gaming. Apple has made a few notable efforts to support gaming on the Mac, with titles like Death Stranding, Assassin's Creed, Inside, and several others, making their way to macOS. That got me thinking, if graphically intensive games like this can run on Apple Silicon, why not try other non-Mac exclusive titles too? So that's what I did exactly. I dove into YouTube and Reddit to find out which Windows games people had successfully run on a MacBook, and I was in for a surprise. So today I'm going to be showing you games I tested on the M1 MacBook Air, how well they run, and what my thoughts are on Mac gaming. These are genuinely the games I love to play on my Mac, and I'm happy to recommend them to you guys. So we are going to be running these games using Crossover via Steam, which is pretty easy to set up. First thing is download Crossover from the CodeWeaver website. The link is in the description. You can try it out, and if you like it, you can buy the full version to continue using it. Once you download Crossover, you'll open the app. Now we'll need to create a bottle, which is like a portal for our game. We shall use Steam to play our games. Log into Steam, and after that, we shall select the 3D Metal, which is basically a translation layer that allows DirectX 11 and DirectX 12 games to run on macOS by translating DirectX cores into Metal API cores. Now your games are set to play. The first game I tested was GTA 5. I was able to get around 30 to 40 FPS, which is respectable for a fanless machine like a MacBook Air. Gameplay was generally smooth, though I did notice occasional stutters, particularly when the laptop started to heat up. Since the MacBook Air lacks an internal fan, it relies on thermal throttling to manage heat, which can impact performance over time. During cutscenes, I experienced some frame drops, but they weren't consistent enough to ruin the experience. What can I say about this game? The graphics are great, storyline is top-notch. The next game I tested was Cyberpunk 2077. Now this one came out natively for Apple Silicon Macs from the M1 up to M5, which is pretty nuts when you look at the recommended game specs. When you look at games like Death Stranding and GTA 5, all these games are graphically intensive, but Cyberpunk 2077 is in its own league. Developers of this game recommend 16 gigs of RAM, but unfortunately, I only have 8 gigs of RAM on my M1 MacBook Air. So I tested it out, and to my surprise, it runs well. Please note that you'll take performance hits, especially when running this game in well-lit scenes. I was running the game at low settings at 720p resolution, and I was getting around 30 FPS, which isn't bad at all, given the specs of the M1 MacBook Air. But highly recommend running the game on 16 gigs of RAM configuration. Even on the M2 MacBook Air, you run into similar performance due to memory issues. Next up is Batman Arkham City. Despite being 15 years old, the graphics still look stunning. Gameplay is smooth and responsive. However, setting up this game took a bit of effort. Scaling it to run in full screen was a hassle. But after some googling, I managed to fix it. The MacBook Air handles this game like a proper gaming PC, especially if you're using a 16 gig model. Roaming through Arkham City at night is a joy, highlighting just how well this game has aged. I'll go as far and say this is the best superhero game ever made. The visuals are impressive, the storyline is compelling, and I absolutely recommend it if you've never played it before. Moving on, we've got Inside. This game is an experience, a surreal emotional trip. It's a dystopian platformer available directly on the Mac App Store, so no third apps are needed to run it unless you've already bought it on the Steam Store. And when I tell you this game is awesome, I mean it. Any Mac user should give it a try. It's one of those few games that genuinely moved me. The sound design and pacing are masterfully done. What really stands out is the atmosphere. You begin by running from these shadowy figures trying to capture you, and then slowly being drawn into a bleak world of survival and mystery. The visuals are minimal but striking. You can max out the settings to run at 60 FPS. With full brightness, and it looks gorgeous. The death animations hit surprisingly hard. The chase sequences are intensive and beautifully orchestrated. I haven't finished it yet, but I've heard the ending really stays with you. I'm looking forward to experiencing that myself. Let me know in the comments if you already played Inside and what your thoughts were. Next up is Assassin's Creed Black Flag. Despite its age, the game runs surprisingly well at 1080p. Like most Assassin's Creed titles, Black Flag features a richly detailed open world populated with dense character models and dynamic environments, and even at 1080p, it still looks impressive. On my MacBook Air, I was getting around 30 to 40 FPS, which is perfectly playable given the game's scale and fidelity. You can expect similar performance in other Assassin's Creed titles, such as Unity, which share the same engine and rendering demands. Interestingly, Apple recently released Assassin's Creed Shadows on the Mac App Store. I'm looking forward to testing that soon to see how well it runs on the M1 Macbook Air. Lastly, we have Red Dead Redemption. This gave me some trouble, especially during cutscenes and audio playback. Even on medium settings, turning up system volume resulted in distorted, choppy sound. I suspect this is due to thermal throttling and limitations on my machine, which has only 8 gigs of RAM. The system seems to struggle with resource allocation, particularly during heavier audio moments. That said, gameplay itself remained stable. I didn't experience any freezing. I was getting around 30 FPS at 1080p, which is acceptable but not ideal for a game of this scope. If you're using a high-end MacBook like one with an M3 chip, you can expect significantly better performance, smoother frame rates, clear audio, and fewer hiccups overall. I tested a lot of games on the M1 Macbook Air, but I didn't finish all of them. The main reason was the storage. My model comes with a 512GB of internal storage, which isn't near enough once you factor in the size of modern games. Add in other essential Mac apps like Adobe Apps and DaVinci Resolve, and the drive fills up quickly. Yes, I know I could get an external SSD. I do plan to, but good ones that work well with MacBooks are expensive and hard to find where I live. As for the games I started but didn't finish, we have Stray, a visually stunning game where you play as a cat, but the overall vibe didn't click with me. We have Little Orpheus, a side-scrolling adventure similar to Inside, about a Russian soldier sent to retrieve something called Little Orpheus. I enjoyed it more than I expected. Next up, we have Baldur's Gate 3. Same case as Stray. Not my type of game, but I understand why people love it so much. These are just some of the titles I tested on the M1 Macbook Air, but I'm not yet done. I plan to try more demanding games like Shadows of the Tomb Raider, Mafia 3, Hitman, and so most importantly, Cyberpunk 2077. Now, if you're using a high-end MacBook, something like an M3 Max, you'll likely have a much better experience. But I'm waiting for Apple's official porting kit update, expected later this year, to properly test Cyberpunk 2077. So make sure to subscribe to the channel if you're interested in that. So, is Mac gaming possible today? Well, absolutely yes. If you told me 3 years ago that I'll be playing games like this on a MacBook Air, I would have laughed, but here we are. Still, while devices like an M3 Max offer mesh shading and more system memory, features the M1 simply lacks, the Mac gaming experience has a long way to go. Apple can push this further, but so far, it doesn't feel like they are fully committed to taking Mac gaming to the next level. The takeaway from this video is simple. The M1 Macbook Air can play a lot of Windows games, but you need to be selective about which ones you choose. 8 gigs of RAM is enough for many titles, but highly demanding open world games, especially newer releases, may require a more powerful MacBook like an M3 Max, which benefits from Apple's advanced porting toolkit and supports features like mesh shading to better showcase these games. That wraps it up for this video.